we have so many challenges to face in the next years. How do you think we can all face them if we work not more, if we work less, and if we leave earlier or if we retire earlier? It will be not possible.
Today, I invited Laurent Mosar, who is a member of parliament, member of the city council of Luxembourg. He's a lawyer, because we have a lot of news in the financial industry. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you to have been invited.
It's a pleasure. So we can jump right into it. Today is a bit of a historical moment. I'm sure you read that Rothschild was condemned. I think the fine is 25 million. It's never happened in the history of Luxembourg. What do you have to say about that?
It's perhaps a very bad news for Rothschild, but I think it's a real good news for Luxembourg. Why? I think it's a real positive sign for the reputation of our finance center, because you know that we had the control by Gaffey some weeks ago. We had no problem with the report of Gaffey, but I heard always some voices saying, yes, you are the champions to implement all the rules, all the regulations, but there is never a decision condemning a bank or another financial institute. And now it's the first time in history that jurisdiction in Luxembourg condemns a very famous bank to a very high fine.
It was money laundering.
25 million is really a high fine. So for me, it's really a positive news because it shows that everybody is responsible. And also the big banks are responsible. So I think the jurisdictions have done their job, and I'm very grateful about that.
Yeah, it's just showing that Luxembourg means business and in a 100% fully compliant way. There are two other topics everybody talks about a lot, at least on social networks. I have in mind Revolut. So we just heard that they chose Paris for their Western Europe headquarters. We know that only 8 years ago, Revolut was asking for a license in Luxembourg, and then they cancelled the request. What's your view on this?
Yeah, no, it's difficult to know what has happened at the time when they had been in Luxembourg, because it seems that at a certain moment they had discussions with CSSF, but finally they decided to ask for an agreement not in Luxembourg but in Lithuania. And now we have heard that they are investing 1 billion in France. So many people contacted me in the last 2 days telling me that's why Luxembourg is not the country who will really get this 1 million, because we know that Revolut is also very successful in Luxembourg. 75,000 holders of an account. And it seems until end of the year, they will reach probably the 100,000. So there is really a need in Luxembourg for such type of banks. We call these banks neobanks. And so I have a little bit the feeling that this is a chance we have not taken. I don't know who is finally responsible. I don't think it's the CSSF which is responsible. They have probably done their job. But I think also the political responsible must also think and have perhaps a discussion why a bank like Revolut has decided not to go to Luxembourg, but go to Paris. And so I'm not so happy about this decision. But on the other hand, there are good news. I have read that Bitstamp got an agreement in Luxembourg. They are very happy about the procedure. It was in a very short delay. So let's say one perhaps news which can lead to discussions, but also one good news, Bitstamp.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to get some information about what happened back in 2017. CSSF doesn't really communicate about it, the ministry also not. I know you've asked parliamentary questions, Sven Clément also did, so I'm expecting some answers to come slowly. But one thing we could question is that, you remember at the time Xavier Bettel launched the LOFT, Luxembourg House of Financial Technology, which is exactly what Revolut is. And if you know the governance, you know that there is no fintech in the board. It's basically a little bit of Profil, a little bit of LFF, a few public servants, and then all the members of the board are paying for a ticket. So you're finding banks, you're finding big fours. Don't you think the governance is at stake? I mean, if you look at the board in 2017 and you talk to them about a disruptive player, of course they would all say, no, leave us alone.
Yeah, you know, it's always difficult in our country because, you know, we have, I would not say a problem, but I say we have many institutions where the government, the state of Luxembourg is a stakeholder, is a shareholder and a stakeholder. So the question is always to know, should the government only send in these boards public officers who are certainly doing a good job. But on the other hand, I also think that we need people from outside. You know, we have actually a big discussion about defense. We should invest in the next years millions and millions in defense projects. I think we need also a certain experience from outside. We don't have actually, not in Luxembourg. So I'm always a little bit wondering whether we are not trying to have, for example, specialists in defense issues and asking them to have a role as a consultant, for example, for the Luxembourgish government, or to be a member of the boards of all these institutions. But I must recognize, and I have also said it in the Chamber of Deputies, that this committee of the Chamber of Commerce has done a great job. They have really developed many good ideas. They have also selected some concrete projects in the satellite area, cybersecurity. So I think we should follow what they have now recommended to the government in their report. But on the other hand, I think we need also to try to hire more specialists in different areas, especially now in the defense area.
Yes, in the defense, I heard that Laurent Mosar was announcing he was trying to make a fund which will attract, of course, specialists. And back to LOFT, I think maybe a quick fix would be to appoint people who are not sponsors, who are not members of the state, but maybe Xavier Buc or maybe Luc Falampin, some experienced startuppers and fintech specialists who could really challenge the board. And so that next time Revolut is knocking on the door or a similar company, there is some appetite, some curiosity, and not a negative reaction. And then, of course, the last topic, which is a recurring topic for the last 2 years. It's been 2 years, but it's a long story. Here we really see how disconnected the political world and the real economy are, because if you read the news, things are doing better. But if you talk to a small entrepreneur who is a butcher or something like this, it's virtually impossible to open a bank account. So how are we progressing, and what is the next step?
Yeah, listen, I am now fighting since more than 2 years for this right of every company in Luxembourg to open a bank account, because I think it must be also a right for every company to have the possibility to open a bank account in a Luxembourgish bank. We know that this is not really working. Why? I think there are probably more reasons, and I would also like to insist it's not only a reason of regulation, because sometimes I have the feeling that banks are hiding behind this over-regulation that exists. But there are perhaps also other reasons for local banks not opening bank accounts. And you must know this issue of ING Bank was not good for the reputation of our country. They have closed thousands of bank accounts of companies. And these entrepreneurs had to find other banks for getting the right to have a bank account. So it's really not good. So what can we do? I think there had been many initiatives from CSSF, from ABBL, also from the government, but it's not enough. And I don't know if you have seen some days ago, I posted on my LinkedIn account a copy of a letter written by the Minister of Finance of the Netherlands. And in this letter, he told his banks to consider only a risk-based approach when they are requested to open a bank account. And I think this is a right approach. Why not only consider the risk approach? Because I'm sure that the big majority of bank customers, there is no risk. There is no risk. The only risk is perhaps that the bank is not earning a lot of money on these clients. This is perhaps an argument I can accept. But on the other hand, like I have also said some days ago in a speech in the Chamber of Deputies, I think our banks, especially our local banks, they have also an obligation toward our economy.
Of course.
They don't have not only an obligation to make the highest profits, but they have also a role to play in our economical world. And actually, I don't think they are really playing this role. And without bank accounts, we have a problem in this country. We have a problem not only for many startups, but besides the startups, there are normal companies, independents, who are no more able to open a bank account. You know, we have funds who are not able to open bank accounts. And I think this is not a normal situation. And we have really to work on that. And I think also Mr. Roth, who is an excellent Minister of Finance, has to go forward and try to find other solutions. And why not write a similar letter to the Luxembourgish banks, telling them to only make a risk-based approach.
So let's go in detail, because there's a lot of material here. So you said, yes, profitability is one thing. If you just have 2,000 euro on your account waiting, they're losing money. But it's not just that. It's the KYC. If they onboard a client that they shouldn't, as you know, they could be in big trouble, severely punished by Europe. And then there's the very big difficulty, which is that now banks are supposed to monitor all the transactions. So if you receive a payment from a friend from Dubai, basically somebody's going to spend an hour and a half working on your case just to see if this is not an illegal transfer. So it's a mess. I think there's maybe a little bit of greed from the banks, maybe, especially we'll talk about one who is public and is publishing very high profits, but also maybe a regulation which has become absurd, and maybe Luxembourg should lead the discussion with Europe. We heard Mrs. von der Leyen saying we went too far. And then maybe a lack of proportionality. I give you some good news. I know that PostFinance is opening more accounts now because they don't do loans. So in a risk-based approach, if you don't loan money to somebody, of course, the risk of being in trouble is much smaller. Being a member of parliament, how can you make those issues come together and get solved?
No, I have not 1,000 possibilities. I can ask parliamentarian questions, what I'm doing very often, also in these issues. I try to push my colleagues in the government to try to find issues to all these problems. But on the other hand, I think banks have really a big responsibility. And we have also one state bank in this country. And I think also that this state bank has perhaps to take more responsibility and try perhaps to open bank accounts also if these bank accounts are not of a very high profitability. And I agree with you. But on the other hand, I know certainly, I just met people before coming here. They told me, listen, we don't find it normal that there is no traditional bank in Luxembourg accepting crypto assets.
That's another topic, yes.
I think we want to be one of the most important finance centers in the world, and there is no bank willing to accept crypto assets.
And there's no real project. I would say Cliffstream is leading the way. They acquired 2 companies, and I think they're Fonds DLT and Knipe, and they're showing interest into it. I don't really have any other example.
Yeah. Okay. On the other hand, I think we are very successful with payment systems. You know, I have just checked it. We have actually 35 payment systems in Luxembourg, and with these payment systems, you can also transfer crypto assets. This is possible. But on the other hand, why is it not possible that I open an account at Sparkasse, at Bill, at Banque Générale, where I can also have crypto assets? So I'm obliged to go to see another bank if I really want to have a crypto assets account. And I always hear from my kids and from the friends of my kids, they are all using crypto.
It's taking us back to Revolut. And Revolut becomes a natural solution.
I think the best, proof that we really need something like that is Revolut. 75,000 customers.
It's crazy.
It's crazy for a small country like Luxembourg. So I don't also understand the traditional banks. They must be aware of that. And now you can personally like crypto assets. You don't have to invest personally in these crypto assets. But on the other hand, I think we cannot stay at the station and look at the train who is passing.
Maybe I can challenge you on that. We've seen some really interesting exchanges between ABBL, the Association of Bankers, and CSSF, which is not the culture of the country. They were trading messages. People will find it on the internet. We know that ABBL is a interesting association because they have the private banking people who have a very specific set of needs, and the funds industry. It's a completely different business. Don't you think that maybe in Luxembourg, this whole banking industry is still run by the old guys, and so they don't have this appetite? We just talked before the interview about Steve David, who now joined Fondbank. It's a specialized player, but he's younger. Maybe he has more appetite for those technologies. Do you think we have a generational issue?
I'm not sure if it's a generation issue, because you have also young persons working for the traditional local banks. I think it's really a question of risk. I know, and you know, that it's perhaps more risky if you accept crypto assets on your accounts than if you only accept traditional assets and traditional monies.
Especially for AML.
So we agree on that. But on the other hand, look what is going on in the United States. Look what is going on in Japan, in China, in all these emerging countries. I think we cannot close the door and say, okay, we are happy in Luxembourg with our traditional banks. We are not interested because we don't want to accept a certain risk. We have to be the first mover. So you know me, I am always saying the biggest advantage of this country was we were always among the first movers. True. And I have actually the feeling, not actually because I think we are going now in a better direction, but let's say in the last 10 years before the arrival of the new government, we were no more among the first movers, and we had to be among the first movers. And there are so many opportunities to seize actually in this country.
Maybe a comment about this. One version that I heard, for people who don't understand the first movers, it's about transposition. Europe publishes a law or a règlement, and every country needs to transpose, and Luxembourg was known for transposing super fast and always with a little advantage. But then came subprime. And after the subprime, we know that Europe came with a vengeance on the financial sector, and then came Brexit. And we also know that our good friends from the UK were always, let's say, protecting Luxembourg from excessive regulation from Europe. And when they were gone, we basically went full regulation mode. You talk about crypto. I don't think anyone in Luxembourg wants to be involved because it's virtually impossible or too expensive to explore the transaction. But the real question is it really the job of the bank to do the control of every transaction? So don't you think what we are lacking in the end is a culture, a more risk approach culture, a more entrepreneurial culture?
I think we have to try to come out of our comfort zone. In the last years, we were perhaps all together too much in a comfort zone. You know, we didn't have big problems, but now we have many challenges to face. You know, only the investments in defense in the next years, it's huge. And actually, we are only speaking of 2%, but perhaps after the next NATO summit, we will speak about 3%.
And it's three times more than what we had.
More than, so we have to face this challenge of defense. And we cannot now discuss it because there will be a decision taken at this NATO summit, and afterwards we have to implement it in Luxembourg. So the discussion time is over. Now we have really to take decisions. And therefore, I think we have really to try to implement first the new regulations coming from Brussels and coming from OECD. But on the other hand, we have also try to go forward and perhaps faster forward in certain areas, like, for example, crypto assets, blockchain, than other countries. And I must say, we were one of the first countries which has adopted the MiCA directive. But now the CSSF has also to follow. I think they are doing a good job. Yes, honestly, I think they are really doing a good job there. But it's now important that perhaps one or two of the big actors would come to Luxembourg. You know, it's always important to have one of the major players. So we need a major player. And I'm sure if tomorrow there will be a major player, there will be also smaller players.
Okay, now maybe let's switch to the topic of last week. We know that Luc Frieden, the Prime Minister, did his presentation of the State of the Nation. What did you think about it?
Yeah, perhaps two remarks. I think personally he has delivered a very good speech with many ideas, many good suggestions, also concrete projects. The problem was afterwards there was only one discussion, and the discussion was only around this pension issue, and I must tell you that I regret it. Why do I regret it? I think it was my 32nd State of the Union debate, and you know, when I was a young member of parliament, I remember these debates. At the time they took 3-4 days. Today everything finished in one day. And so many speakers were also discussing about issues of, for example, our finance center, or about economic issues. Today, I would say 90% of the speeches were only turning around working less, going or retiring earlier, and nobody was really trying to explain how we can be sure that this welfare state in which we are living, because let's be honest, will be also guaranteed for the next generation, for the next years. And I was really a little bit angry about the decision, this discussion, and I was saying at a certain moment, listen, we have so many challenges to face in the next years. How do you think we can all face them if we work not more, if we work less, and if we leave earlier or if we retire earlier? It will be not possible. Look around other countries in the European Union, they are working much more. They are retiring only at 65, at 67, at 68. So I think we have to lead a discussion and saying how could we face all these challenges with less people. And I am always a defender of the independence and the small and middle-sized companies. Why? I think these companies and this independence are very important for our economy. Very, very important, perhaps on another level than the banks or the financial industry, but they are important. And nobody is taking care. You know many independents who are working weekends, who are working late in the evenings. They are working until 70, 75 years together, sometimes with their children. So nobody is taking care. And all these middle and small size companies, also all these independents, what are they doing actually? They are during hours in their offices doing or signing formulas. And finally, they don't have the time to really take care of their core business. And I think this is a real catastrophe. But nobody seems, well, for nobody this seems to be an issue. And I think it's not normal in a country like Luxembourg. And I think we have around 60, 70,000 independents and a small and middle-sized company. And tomorrow, if there are no more there, who will come if you have a problem in your house?
Exactly.
So I would really like if also my colleagues from other parties would really also discuss sometimes about these issues, because these issues are really important for the future of our country.
So let's dig about the reasons behind it. You've been at the Chambre since 1994. You've been president of the
Speaker
Chambre.
of the Chamber, yes, of the Parliament. Yeah.
Exactly. So you have a lot of experience. You have those 30 years of experience. Where did you see the shift happening? Is it when somebody like me would think that because the public service has become so big, all the policies are now driven with CGFP and unions in mind? I have one very specific example. Not OGBL, sorry. The Socialist Party in the last election 2 years ago was in its program, they wrote a 6-week of holiday in the context of low productiveness and attractiveness. So do you think this is it, or it's just we just got too complacent?
I think there are many reasons, but perhaps the main reasons is if you look a little bit at the composition of our parliament, you will see that there are not many independents. Yeah? There are not, or there are no shareholders or managers of middle or small-sized companies.
Okay.
And therefore, you know, there is nobody taking care of the interest of all these people. If you don't have anybody who comes from these sectors, who will defend these sectors? For example, I think it would be important to have also business owners, to have, for example, a butcher in your parliament, and we don't have.
But I imagine your parties are connected with those.
But normally we have also these candidates on our lists, but they are not elected. Why they are not elected? And on the other hand, you know, it's not easy. I was during a long time in this position. If you are, for example, an independent, you are a lawyer, you are a doctor, you know, it's difficult today to work or to continue to work in your business as a lawyer, as a doctor, and to be also in the parliament. It's difficult. And afterwards, you lose your patients, you lose your clients.
Of course.
Yeah. And afterwards, when you are no more re-elected, you have a problem. Because to get back your clients and your patients, it's not really very easy. And therefore, I think the political life is really not attractive for many people, also, for example, for CEOs.
Yeah, it's true. There's two things come to mind here. The first is a notion of superior interest. I mean, in the end, I don't think politicians are elected just to satisfy voters all the time. I think they're here to make sure the country is going to do well for the next generation. So do you see this during your discussion with other members of parliament? Do you see people thinking further than the next election?
Yeah, that's a little bit normal. Look, I am now in a very good position. I am, let's say, at the autumn of my career. But you have also young colleagues who are at springtime of their career, and I understand a little bit that they are worrying if they will be re-elected next time. So, okay, they are perhaps taking another decision that I would take because, you know, I have nothing to lose. So I am perhaps more independent and more free than many of my other colleagues. And I think it would be important because I have no problem with public officers, with teachers and with other people working for the Luxembourgish state. But you must know somebody who is elected and who has been working before as a public teacher, when he's no more re-elected, he will automatically be reintegrated in his former career with his former salary, so he has no risk at all.
True.
The independence, like we have been discussing some minutes ago, they really have to support a big risk. And if you have a family with children, you know, it's not always very easy.
And the second point, apart from the superior interest, is ignorance. Do you feel that our members of parliament are informed properly?
I am not sure. They are certainly informed about many issues, but I must also recognize that today the parliamentarian life is much more complicated. You know, we get every day directives from Brussels. They are very technical, complicated, and it's sometimes I don't understand these laws and these bills coming from Brussels. So somebody who has not my experience and who is not working in that sector, I can understand that it's very difficult for this person to really understand what is going on. But on the other hand, I think it's important that we continue to have also in our parliament specialists of the finance center, because how do you want to take a decision concerning these finance centers if you have no idea about what is going on in these finance centers? I think, because I have many contacts with the actors of these finance sectors, I understand a little bit what is going on. I don't understand everything. Nobody can understand everything. But I think I understand a little bit how this finance sector is functioning and what this finance center needs in the future. But most of my colleagues, and this is really not a reproach I am doing to these colleagues, but they don't have these informations I have.
I also had discussion with politicians and members of parliament about funds, about private equity, and I was sometimes surprised, given the fact that I think the last number is 80% of corporate taxes in Luxembourg come from the financial center. I would assume, if it's so central in our economy, that every member of parliament should follow a training just to know what they talk about, so that we don't lose. I recently interviewed Mr. Goebbels, who was Minister of Economy from 89 to 99, and he told me, we knew at the time we did not want to go from one monopole, the steel industry, to another one, but we failed.
We failed.
We are back to a single source of
revenue.
We
have different governments have failed in the diversification of our economy. Yes. Okay, we all know that this is not a good situation for Luxembourg, because we are depending too much of this finance industry. Yes. But on the other hand, we have also to do everything to guarantee that this finance industry will stay in Luxembourg.
Exactly. So it's both protecting finance, making sure the real economy, the small independents and entrepreneurs are thriving, and of course boosting our industry. We know there's a long history. We attracted Goodyear, Dupont, etc. Now we have Amazon. It's not really industry, but we were very good at attracting giants, and it's more difficult. So maybe just to conclude, where do you see the country going in the next few years? And what do we need to make sure that we capture the opportunity?
I think I continue to be optimist for our country, also for our economy. But like I have underlined some moments ago, I think it's important first that we find back some of our qualities. One quality is try to be always among the first movers. Secondly, very important for me, to find back the country of the short ways. Because at the time, you remember, in the 90s, in the years 2000, why Luxembourg was so successful, because everybody knows this is the country of the short ways. If we want to meet the director of the regulator, we can meet it. If we want to meet the minister of economy, we will meet.
It was very fast.
It was fast. Today, it's no more the case. But on the other hand, I think it's easy because that has not a financial impact if we are going back to be the country of the short ways. On the other hand, and that's perhaps my conclusion, we have actually in the European Union, in Europe also compared to other countries out of Europe, perhaps our best argument, selling argument, is our political stability. Because look a little bit around. Germany, okay, now the Germans, they have finally a new government. You know the situation in France, in Belgium, in the Netherlands, in the United States.
Italy, Finland.
You never
Austria.
know what will go on in these countries tomorrow if there will be not a political crisis. We are happy, actually, to have a government, to have a majority. They are doing, personally, I think, a good job. It's not a perfect job. There are certainly things to improve. But generally spoken, I think we are on a good way. The track is the right track. So let's continue on that right track.
Very good. I'm also very optimistic. You know that I'm looking at the Parliament session a lot. Since you're a member of Parliament, I find it very much a pity that the videos are only in Luxembourgish. We now have so many tools. I think it should be available maybe in English, maybe in French, just to make sure that we are not shrinking, because this would be really very good for the ADR. I think we need a very vivid democracy. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you, and it's always a pleasure to come back.
And congratulations for your efforts on the social network to share the political life of Luxembourg.
Thank you.